America, I'm Eric Ham, coming to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. The Justice Department releases another batch of documents from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's files, including at least 8,000 items, such as court records, emails, new clippings, and videos. Thailand rejects Cambodia's request to hold bilateral talks in a neutral country, casting doubt on a planned meeting aimed at negotiating an end to the deadly border clashes that have already killed more than 40 people. Markets rise and gold and silver hit new records as optimism over further rate cuts by the Fed, as well as easing AI fears, lift investor confidence. India's foreign minister visits Sri Lanka and commits $450 million in humanitarian assistance to help the country in its recovery caused by a cyclone last month. And Kuwait signs a $4.1 billion deal with China to complete construction of a major port as the oil-rich nation seeks to diversify its economy and expand its role in the global trade. President Donald Trump has announced a brand new class of American warships that will bear his name. Speaking on Monday, President Donald Trump unveiled what he called a revamped Golden Fleet, anchored by a new generation of heavily armored vessels officially titled the Trump class. It's a rare and controversial honor, of course, typically reserved for presidents only after they've left office and usually when they're dead. Standing at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida, flanked by large posters of futuristic warships labeled USS Defiant, Trump laid out a sweeping vision for the U.S. Navy's future. In his words, the warships will be 100 times more powerful than anything the United States has built before.
And again, it's 100 times more powerful than the previous Iowa class, it's called. Those are the big ones that you'd see on a show. Victory at Sea. I don't know if anyone's seen Victory at Sea, but it was a classic. They'll help maintain American military supremacy, revive the American shipbuilding industry, and inspire fear in America's enemies all over the world. We want respect. We're going to have it. We already have it. We're more respected now than we ever were.
The plan begins with 2 Trump-class battleships, but the ambition doesn't stop there. The president says the fleet could eventually grow to between 20 and 25 vessels, forming the backbone of a dramatically expanded Navy that includes both manned and unmanned ships. Now, according to President Trump, these warships will weigh between 30,000 and 40,000 tons and will carry an arsenal that sounds pulled straight from science fiction. They'll be armed with missiles and guns, as well as weaponry still in development, such as lasers and hypersonic missiles. The vessels will also carry the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missiles currently under development. Now, President Trump described these vessels as some of the most lethal surface warships available.
These cutting-edge vessels will be some of the most lethal surface warfare ships. They will be actually the most ever built other than our submarines. We have submarines which will have, in many ways, even more lethality, and we have many of them under construction.
Navy Secretary John Phelan reinforced the message with a warning aimed squarely at America's rivals, declaring that when a Trump-class ship appears on the horizon, American victory at sea is inevitable.
The future Trump-class battleship, the USS Defiant, will be the largest, deadliest, and most versatile and best-looking warship anywhere on the world's oceans.
Now, historically, U.S. battleships have been named after states, symbols of national unity rather than individual leaders. But President Trump's name is already emblazoned across hotels, golf courses, and now increasingly public institutions. Critics argue the warship announcement fits a broader pattern they describe as narcissistic. Supporters, however, see it as a bold assertion of American strength at a time of growing global competition. And that competition is very real. U.S. officials have repeatedly warned that America is falling behind China in shipbuilding capacity. In fact, last year, more than 60% of the global ship orders went to Chinese yards. China now operates the world's largest navy with 234 warships compared to the U.S. Navy's 219, a gap that has narrowed steadily over the past 2 decades. Now, Trump has made reversing that trend a personal mission since returning to office in January. And the announcement comes days after the Navy revealed plans for another new class of frigates designed to complement larger warships, and months after the U.S. struck a deal with Finland to purchase and co-build advanced icebreakers. Whether the Trump class becomes a lasting symbol of naval dominance or a lightning rod for controversy, one thing is certainly clear. America's future at sea is being reshaped, and reshaped loudly. As steel meets ambition and politics meets firepower, the oceans may soon carry a fleet unlike any the world has seen before. The war of words between the United States and Venezuela has turned sharper, louder, and far more dangerous. President Donald Trump has issued a fresh and unusually blunt warning to Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro. He suggested that it would be quote-unquote smart for Maduro to step down. Speaking from his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, flanked by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Trump made it clear that the gloves are coming off. Asked directly whether the goal was to force Maduro out of power, Trump replied that it probably would be and warned that the Venezuelan leader should stop playing tough.
The goal in Venezuela to force Maduro from power?
Well, I think it probably would. I can't tell. That's up to him what he wants to do. I think it would be smart for him to do that. But again, we're going to find out. Look, Venezuela did terrible things to the United States. They sent hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people into our open border. They sent their criminals, they sent their prisoners, they sent their drug dealers, they sent their mentally insane and incompetent people.
Now, the comments mark a sharp escalation after months of mounting pressure on Caracas. And the pressure is not just rhetorical. At sea, the U.S. Coast Guard has been chasing a third Venezuelan oil tanker, describing it as part of a so-called dark fleet used to evade American sanctions. Washington has already seized 2 oil tankers off Venezuela's coast and says it might keep both the vessels and nearly 4 million barrels of oil aboard them, oil valued at up to $100 million.
The oil that has been seized, the United States seized 1.9 million barrels of oil on December 10th.
We're going to keep it.
Where's it going? Are we going to sell it or put it in the strategic?
Maybe we'll sell it. Maybe we'll keep it. Maybe we'll use it in the strategic reserves. We're keeping it. We're keeping the ships also.
Now, Trump claims that oil money from Caracas is being used to fund drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. Venezuela's president has fired back, with Maduro accusing Washington of international piracy and said President Trump would be better off focusing on America's domestic problems rather than threatening Venezuela.
I have been reflecting in recent days on the illegal aggressions that have occurred. I think that President Trump could do better in his country and in the world. He would do better within his country with economic and social issues. He would do better with the world if he attended to the issues of his country, each president to their own, because it cannot be that 70% of his speeches, declarations, and time is about Venezuela.
Caracas fears that the blockade is a direct attempt at regime change, a concern echoed not only by 2 major global powers, but by White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles as well. Russia has expressed what it calls full support for Venezuela, condemning U.S. actions that include the seizure of tankers and earlier strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats. China has gone even further, calling Washington's moves a serious violation of international law.
The arbitrary detention of vessels from other nations by the U.S. side constitutes a serious violation of international law. China has consistently opposed illegal and unilateral sanctions that lack a basis in international law or authorization by the United Nations Security Council. China opposes any actions that violate the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter and infringe upon the sovereignty and security of other countries.
Now, behind the geopolitical showdown lies a fragile economy that's on the brink. Venezuela is trapped in a prolonged collapse marked by hyperinflation, extreme poverty, and mass immigration. Its currency is nearly worthless, and oil, heavily sanctioned oil, remains its lifeline. Once producing over 3 million barrels a day in the early 2000s, Venezuela pumped out about 772,000 barrels daily in 2024. China was its biggest buyer in 2024, followed by the United States, Europe, India, and Cuba. Now, to bypass sanctions, Caracas increasingly accepts payment in digital assets, including cryptocurrency. But analysts warn that a sustained blockade could scare off shipping companies, drive up freight costs, and choke Venezuela's already reeling economy. And as warships, shadow tankers, and diplomats clash at the United Nations, the message from Washington, however, is unmistakable. Pressure will continue. Whether this campaign forces change in Caracas or pushes the crisis into even more dangerous territory is a question the world may soon have to confront. For now, however, Venezuela's oil has become the front line of a growing global standoff. And now to Greenland, where tensions have flared between the United States and its NATO ally Denmark after President Donald Trump appointed a special envoy to Greenland. The move has triggered strong reactions from leaders in Denmark and Greenland, who have firmly rejected any suggestion that the island could come under U.S. control. In a rare joint statement, Danish Prime Minister and Greenland's Prime Minister said, national borders and sovereignty are protected by international law and cannot be ignored.
We have said it very clearly before. Now we say it again. National borders and the sovereignty of states are rooted in international law. You cannot annex other countries.
Both Greenland and Denmark's reactions follows President Trump's announcement this past Sunday, where he said that Louisiana's Governor Jeff Landry would serve as the U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland. The president has repeatedly said that the United States needs Greenland for national security and has refused to rule out the use of force to gain control of the mineral-rich island. On social media, President Trump said Landry understood how important Greenland was to U.S. security and would advance American interests for the safety of its allies.
We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security.
Now, Landry, who became Louisiana's governor in January of 2024, thanked the president for the appointment and said it was an honor to serve in what he described as a volunteer role to make Greenland part of the United States. The statement sparked outrage in Copenhagen as Denmark's foreign minister said he was deeply upset and would summon the U.S. ambassador to demand an explanation. He also describes Landry's remarks as completely unacceptable.
The integrity of the kingdom is up to the kingdom, and therefore we will soon summon the U.S. ambassador to Denmark to a conversation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to go through two things. Firstly, to once again make it clear that there are some lines being crossed here, but of course also to get an explanation.
Now, Greenland's leaders were equally firm, saying that this appointment might sound dramatic but change nothing on the ground.
We have our own democracy, our own decisions, and a strong community. Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders.
Now, Greenland is strategically located between North America and Europe and lies on the shortest missile route between the U.S. and Russia. It's also drawing growing interest from China and Russia as Arctic routes and resources become more important. So while most of Greenland's 57,000 residents want independence from Denmark, opinion polls show they don't want to become part of the United States. And now the controversy has drawn strong support from Denmark as well as across Europe. European Commission spokesperson said territorial integrity and sovereignty are fundamental principles of international law, adding that the EU stands in full solidarity with Denmark and Greenland. Sweden and Norway have also voiced clear support for Copenhagen as well.
it is not for me here to comment on U.S. decisions, but what I can say about the EU position is the following, which has been our long-standing position on the matter, that preserving the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark, its sovereignty, and the inviolability of its borders is essential for the European Union.
Now, this is not the first time these tensions have surfaced. Denmark previously summoned the U.S. and diplomats over alleged influence efforts in Greenland, and senior U.S. figures, including Donald Trump Jr. and Vice President J.D. Vance, have visited the island in recent months. As Arctic security rises on the global agenda, one question now hangs in the air. Is this just political posturing or the beginning of a much bigger struggle over the future of the world's far north? A few years ago, Nicki Minaj was calling out Donald Trump's immigration policies and vowing she would never jump on the Trump bandwagon. Today, however, she's singing a different, or rapping a different tune, praising the president on a MAGA stage, applauding his leadership, and hailing his vice president as a role model for young men. So what happened? From outspoken Trump critic to one of the most unexpected celebrity supporters, Nicki Minaj's political U-turn is raising eyebrows and redrawing the line between hip-hop culture and American politics.
You have amazing role models.
Nicki Minaj did not arrive at Turning Point USA's America Fest in Arizona with a policy speech or campaign announcement. She came with open praise for Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. That alone was enough to make headlines. Minaj appeared on stage alongside Erica Kirk, the widow of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. During the conversation, she described Trump and Vance as leaders she admired and as figures young men could relate to.
I have the utmost respect and admiration for our president. He has, I don't know if he even knows this, but he's given so many people hope that there's a chance to beat the bad guys. And you have
the most talked about moment came when Minaj, while praising J.D. Vance, referred to him as an assassin by mistake.
Assassin J.D. Vance, our vice president. And when I say that,
The moment carried particular weight because the event was memorializing Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated earlier this year.
Dear young men, you have amazing role models, handsome, dashing president. And you have amazing role models like the assassin J.D. Vance, our vice president. And when I say that,
Minaj's appearance mattered less for what she said than for where she said it.
Trust me, there's nothing new under the sun that I have not heard, so you're fine.
Turning Point USA is one of the most influential conservative youth organizations in the United States and is closely aligned with Trump-era Republican politics. The contrast with Minaj's past views is sharp. In 2015, she called Trump's presidential campaign childish.
There are points he has made that may not have been so horrible if his approach wasn't so childish. But in terms of entertainment, I think he's hilarious. I wish they could just film him running for president. That's the ultimate reality show.
In 2020, she declared that she will not jump on the Trump bandwagon.
I get that a lot of people don't like him for obvious reasons. But what stuck with me was the children being taken away from their parents when they came into this country. That really bothered me because I was one of those immigrant children coming to America to flee poverty. And I couldn't imagine a little child going through all of that, trying to get to another country because they didn't have money in their country, or whether you're fleeing from war.
In 2018, during Trump's first term, she publicly condemned his administration's zero-tolerance immigration policy that led to the separation of thousands of migrant children from their families at the U.S.-Mexico border. The America Fest appearance fits into a wider evolution in Minaj's public image. Once known as pop's neon bright provocateur, celebrated for excess, irony, and outsider appeal, she now appears more conservatively styled and increasingly comfortable in Republican-aligned spaces.
You now have a whole amazing UN barbs. We're now in the United Nations barbs.
She has mocked Democratic officials, echoed conservative messaging on transgender youth, and became an unlikely favorite among MAGA supporters.
Wow, Nikki, we've been waiting for the emergence!
That shift has unsettled parts of her fan base, particularly within the LGBTQ+ community that once saw Minaj as a symbol of fluidity and defiance. Critics argue that her recent rhetoric reinforces traditional norms rather than challenging them. Supporters counter that Minaj has always resisted being boxed in politically, culturally, or creatively.
Dear Newscom,
Minaj's America Fest appearance shows how political influence now often works through presence rather than persuasion. She did not argue, debate, or campaign. Simply showing up and speaking warmly about Trump and Vance was the message.
Assassin J.D. Vance, our vice president.
Christmas usually arrives with bells, bargains, and blinking red lights. This year, in Canada's Montreal, it arrived with shopping carts and a message. Under the glow of supermarket fluorescence, Santa did not whisper wishes. In fact, he grabbed groceries instead. Lining up to pay, St. Nick slipped into the night. The festive crime struck a nerve as Canadians grapple with rising food prices, record corporate profits, and a cost of living crisis that even Prime Minister Mark Carney has called a national pressure point. With trust in institutions wearing thin, some are taking matters into their own hands. Here's a look at what exactly happened.
It was the week before Christmas when Santa came calling, not with toys, but with trolleys. In a Montreal supermarket late Monday night, red suits flooded the aisles. White beards bobbed between shelves. Masked elves fanned out, and carts filled quickly. Then, just as suddenly, the Santas vanished into the winter dark, leaving behind stunned staff and empty shelves. This was no festive flash mob. It was a heist, deliberate, choreographed, and political. As per Montreal police, roughly 40 people took part in the raid on a Metro grocery store in the Plateau Mont-Royal neighborhood around 9:15 p.m. Police say the group left without paying, stealing food worth an estimated $3,000. Then, hours later, an explanation arrived. An activist group, calling itself Robins des Ruelles, or Robins of the Alleys, claimed responsibility. In a statement titled, "When Hunger Justifies the Means," the group said the food would be redistributed to people struggling to eat amid Canada's cost of living crisis.
We are working more and more just to afford food. A handful of corporations are holding our basic needs hostage.
The group accused supermarket chains of using inflation as a cover to post record profits while ordinary Canadians fall behind. For them, the theft was not a crime, but a correction. Video posted online by allied activists, Les Soulèvements du Fleuve, showed Santas and elves sweeping through a Metro store, arms full, faces hidden. The footage spread quickly, and so did public reaction. Montreal police confirmed an investigation is ongoing. Officers are reviewing CCTV footage and interviewing witnesses. No arrests have been made so far. Metro, which owns several major grocery brands across Quebec and Ontario, called the act unacceptable. Shoplifting is a criminal act regardless of motive, a spokesperson said. Retail crime, the spokesperson added, cost Canadian businesses more than $9 billion in lost sales in 2024.
Inflation in the food sector is largely influenced by external factors, including disruptions to the global supply chain, volatile commodity prices, and changes in international trade conditions. Prices on store shelves directly reflect supply chain costs.
The spokesperson also highlighted Metro's philanthropic record, noting the company donated $1.15 million to food banks in 2025 and provided more than $81 million worth of food products. Statistics Canada data shows grocery prices rose nearly or over 5% year over year, even as overall inflation cooled. Profits remain near record highs. Trust, meanwhile, is in short supply. Good Santa or bad Santa? The law is clear. Public opinion is not. And as Christmas approaches, Montreal has been left with an uncomfortable question and a striking image. Santa came early this year, and instead of presents, he brought groceries.
That's going to do it for us today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.